Evening, folks. Phil Gallagher here for a tutoring session. Joining me, you probably can't see them, but you can probably hear the audio, is the InnistradRevenueService. How you doing tonight?
I'm doing great, Phil. How are you tonight?
I'm doing pretty well. So Innistrad Revenue Service contacted me looking for a little bit of extra D&T help because he's been having a little bit of trouble in the current metagame. So we're going to be playing through a league tonight, and we're going to take just a minute or two here to talk about his deck list at the beginning. So the main deck looks relatively stock-ish to me. Tell me about your sideboard. What are you hedging against with what you've made here?
So I'm really hedging against. Uh, I've got a few problem decks here that I've been seeing. I've been seeing a lot of the Oko decks. I mean, I looked at the top 18 decks, I think it was last night when I was making my deck list, and like four or five of them were Oko decks, four or five were combo, and then the other couple were like Delver and Prisony stuff. So I've got three Council's Judgments in my board and Cataclysms for the Oko decks. Uh, Fairy Macabre, because even though I haven't been seeing a ton of Reanimator lately, the last time I tried to take out the Surgical Fairy Macabre package, I ran into like three of it in one league, so I just decided that that's never coming out of the deck again.
Well, Fairy also has some upside versus Breach because unlike Surgical, you can play it through a Silence. So I know I've talked with Bryant Cook recently about how cards like Leyline and Fairy are really good as legacy sideboard cards right now.
Yeah.
It's also better with your Chalice than Fairy, in case you have to put Chalice on one. Sorry, Fairy's also better
Surgical.
if you have Yes, better than Surgical if you already have the Chalice on one.
Yeah. I'm doing a 50-50 split on the Chalice and Deafening Silence because I was on 3-1 with Chalices up more because I just think it's a better card in general. But with the rise of these breach decks that can come in on turn one, turn two easily, I'd just rather have something else that I can do under them.
Oh, I 100% agree. Will you put the Fairies into the column on the right for me? And then
Sure.
drag Council's Judgment and the Cataclysms to the middle? So what I'm noticing in D&T deck construction right now is that you usually have cards for super fast combo, cards specifically for Oko, and then very few other sideboard slots remaining. So I think part of the D&T difficulty right now is that we have to fight against Breach and we have to fight against Oko, and that means we have fewer tools for other places. Like you don't have room for things like Pithing Needle, Walking Ballista that might be great in the mirror for things of that nature.
Yeah, actually, I up until last night I was running a ballista over the Mishra's Factory as my 24th land, and I was running that main board as just a little bit more of a hedge against the mirror because I find that that's a matchup that I lose more often, and I think that that's probably just a depth of skill and knowledge of the matchup more than anything.
Yeah,
But
I mean,
any
the mirror is
little bit
very
of
skill
work can help.
intensive, and you also don't have many bonus tools in the sideboard,
Yeah, I've got the
like
relic warders, and
three
then
Council Judgments and maybe a Path if we get desperate, which it looks like we will be, because you have 6 cards to board out for that matchup.
yeah, but otherwise the main deck's not too exciting. Trying to play a longer, slower game. Two prelates is probably the spiciest tech, and three revoker. Again, just trying to work against the Oko decks a little bit more for game one.
I mean, I think Revoker's good again. It had kind of this period where it was pretty medium, because there was a lot of Delver floating around where it basically did nothing, and it wasn't quite stable enough to stick around on the board. But it happens to be good at stopping Lion's Eye Diamond and Oko simultaneously, so that's a good place to be.
Yeah, and then it's another creature type to get around the everybody's favorite hate card for us right now in Plague Engineer.
Card's good. All right, let's go ahead and hop into a league and just see how we fare tonight. For anyone who hasn't watched one of my tutoring sessions before, rather than telling my opponent what the plays are, sorry, my tutoree what the plays are, I'm going to be asking a lot of leading questions. All right, let's do it.
Awesome. I was just grabbing my little notebook that I keep because I started doing this deck for a an event here last winter. My friends got me into the deck in Modern, and then a year later they wanted to do a team event. And because I was the one that had something close to a Legacy deck, I got thrown to Legacy, and I've just kind of been here since. But I tried to front load a lot of my work on that with a sideboarding guide a little bit.
It helps, but it's real hard to make that the first time around.
Yeah, I did it with a lot of help, admittedly, from your site.
Yeah. As a side note, there's upcoming changes to that as well. I spent a lot of my day off on Monday doing tweaking and reformatting and stuff. So there's not exactly new content there yet, but things are in motion.
Awesome. Yeah, I actually went back through and changed the list a couple of times here for my sideboarding guide, like a couple weeks back, as I realized, like, wow, I still have just blue-white miracles in this. That's
Yeah, things have changed. All right.
okay. So we're playing against Tess.
Maybe. We're definitely keeping this hand. That's unquestionable.
Yeah,
Um,
we've got a Vile, Athalia, and Disruption for their mana. We're keeping this hand.
I suspect that our opponent may actually be on Breach, though.
Still some form of a combo deck.
Yes.
Uh, the Batterskull kind of sucks here in our hand, but like if we can cast it, we probably just win if he's trying to do the test goblin thing.
Well, the whole reason we're keeping this hand is because we're on the play and we have a turn 2 Thalia. Against
Yep.
either one of those decks, backed up with Wasteland and Port, that's a very good starting point. Whether, and then we're just hoping for, like, basically literally anything off the top.
So pretty standard play. Plains Vile go.
Yeah, nothing to say there.
Thoughtseize takes our Thalia.
Yep.
We feel a little sad, but not terrible.
That's okay. We now get time.
Now we've come to a decision point. Do I try and jam the Stoneforge, or do I just go for a port here?
What's the upside of playing Stoneforge?
So upside of Stoneforge is we just drop the Batterskull next turn if he doesn't answer it. Otherwise, we are just kind of waiting and hoping that he doesn't get to go off.
Okay. What are the current advantages of your hand?
We have some inevitability here with the Batterskull whenever we want. We're soft again to another Thoughtseize, though. So I think I'm just going to go ahead and play the Stoneforge out here.
I would not. So I would say the advantage of your hand is that you can continue to Rishadan Port your opponent's land while you make land drops. So your greatest resource right now is actually lands, right? So you should leverage that by dragging the game on.
I see.
Since you have this Ether Vial in play, next turn you can potentially wasteland your opponent and put in Stoneforge, then play a Batterskull. Otherwise, you just make a land drop pass.
Yep.
So now you repeat the same line as last turn, but now you can continue to port your opponent while getting Stoneforge. Yep.
Yep. yeah. For the people who are watching this at home on stream or whatever, ooh, that's a wasteland target. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, I came to Phil here tonight because I've been keeping track of my record for the last 8 months or so, and I've ended up at like 49.4% win ratio. So I've come to him just trying to get a little bit cleaner. Stone Chite or SoFi. I think that SoFi might be correct here.
I would agree with that. It draws you cards, and that's something that could be quite valuable.
So I think that the vial's definitely going up this turn.
That's correct.
I'm not sure if I'm porting, however. So I can wasteland them and port them and keep them off of 2 lands here effectively.
Remember, you also have this sneaky Flicker Wisp, right?
This is true. We could.
So, keeping that in mind, what's your best turn?
I think my best turn is waste the Volk, tap port or tap port and planes with the Stoneforge to drop the Batter Skull in,
Mm-hmm.
and then Vial and the Wisp reset my port.
Okay, well, let's start with the Wasteland, right? Because that's something we're 100% doing.
Yep.
Now, you effectively have 3 to 4 mana. So, what you want to do is probably create this Batter Skull and do something else to deny the opponent's mana. You can, hold on, let's think through the rest of the turn before you take any actions.
Okay.
So, you can use 2 of your mana to tap one of your opponent's lands. You can also Flicker Wisp out a land. Instead of resetting one of your own, you could also just junk one of your opponent's land via the Flicker Wisp. So instead, you could play a Mom, hold up Port and Plains to put in the Batter Skull, and Flicker Wisp out, swamp it, your end step.
That sounds like a really good line. I think we're going to go for that one.
Thought you might say that.
Stoneforge attack there was the correct line, right?
Well, you're paying 2 mana to put in the Batter Skull, right?
I know, I'm joking.
Okay. Excuse me. There will be some merit in considering putting in the Sword of Fire and Ice instead. We're probably putting in the Batter Skull, but it's just something to consider.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we're just looking for a clock at this moment. He's already put himself to 16, and he seems to be digging pretty hard here with a couple of brains. Like, all the spells he's played have either been just the Thoughtseize to disrupt me or brainstorms to dig for his own stuff. So I think that we've got ourselves a nice advantage here on the mana side of things and keeping his combo in check. I think it's time to apply some pressure.
Yeah. So I'm currently all about putting the Batter Skull in and turning all of the creatures sideways. So we have 4, 7, 8, 9 damage, 12, 13, 14, 15 if we spike a land to put Sword of Fire and Ice into play.
Yep.
But we're really looking to get a disruptive piece into play. Because if our opponent can't go off now, they should be very likely to go off next turn. Here we go. Okay.
Ooh, Wishclaw. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Opponent only has one card left. Oh, okay.
So we've survived the turn. We'll always no to that.
Yeah, send them all in. So once our opponent showed us the Wish Claw Talisman, you can play the Vial, I guess. Once our opponent showed us the Wish Claw Talisman, there definitely was merit in putting the Sword of Fire and Ice into play, because the Wish Claw Talisman plus the Echo potentially represents a kill.
Mm-hmm.
I'd take off the red, I guess. It's like a crapshoot whether you go for the red or the blue, because like there's Petal there for the other one.
Yeah.
Don't F6 through this turn though, because our opponent went and got
the Echo.
The Echo, so we could potentially Echo and hit Sanctum Prelate, which would be very good. All right.
There's the LED.
All right. So here we go.
Here we go, spinning the wheels.
Oh, thank you.
Hey.
So I would put in the Sanctum Prelate now.
Then I think we want to put that on. All those win cons are on 4, right? I don't think that Breach plays black.
That is correct. All win cons are on 4. 2 and 4 are really the only numbers that you should consider in this position.
So I'm gonna shut off win cons here, unless he storms up to 24 and grape shots us.
Well, a Burning Wish into an Answer for Prelate can potentially do things as well. But that would require Burning Wish, the ability to cast the answer, plus another way to actually win the game. So that's asking a lot.
So there's the wish. Is it another Echo?
It may be.
It's a tutor.
So I'm not sure. Oh, okay. That's the line. Is re-echo.
That's another number we could have considered, was putting Prelate on 6 for the Echoes.
Absolutely not. There's probably 1 to 2 of those in the 75. And Echo doesn't actually win the game itself. So
Okay.
2 shuts off Wishclaw Talisman and Burning Wish, which gets the win conditions. And 4 stops the win conditions themselves.
So if we
He's
die, this
going.
die this turn. But let's look at the next turn here from our side, I guess. So we want to, maybe not. I was gonna say we could pick our wasteland target here if it matters, but I don't think it really does.
You're either swinging for lethal or losing the game in all likelihood.
Yeah. So is it okay to F6 at this point?
Yeah, you have no other possible plays. You don't have a Mem Knight you can put in off a Vial.
I'm also gonna apologize in advance. I'm probably gonna forget to move my mic up whenever I take a drink at some point in this stream.
Oh, I'm so used to that sort of thing. Don't worry about it.
He might actually just be going for the grave shot at this point.
Yes, it is very possible. So storm count is 17. Mana is definitely tight, though.
Yeah. Storm count 18. Man, that Thalia would have been putting in some work if we could have had it. But I guess that's true against any combo deck.
Okay, so there's Wishclaw Talisman, activate, crack LED, get Burning Wish, Grape Shot. There's a pause here, though, so it's not that easy.
Yeah. I mean, Brian,
I guess the question is how many Burning Wishes are in exile / how many Burning Wishes are actually in the deck. That might be the problem.
There's probably 3 or 4. It seems to be a pretty big card in the deck.
Well, things have changed somewhat recently. Yeah, okay, so there are still 4 wishes. So there's 2 in exile.
After.
Oh, I figured out the issue. The issue is that you are at 24 because you gained life from a Batterskull hit.
Batterskull. So he's trying to figure out how he can storm up another 3.
Well, he's probably trying to figure out how do I beat my opponent if they get one or both of these Wish Claws to use. So, like, you can Wish Claw and then, like, play another Sanctum Prelate.
Right.
So we saw an Infernal Tutor out of him, correct?
We did.
Okay, so that does not match the deck list that is on his site currently. So he's potentially testing some things out. I'm going to do a little research here.
He's apologizing on the chat for taking so long. It's a tough line.
So his most recent challenge one also does not have the Infernal Tutor.
I wonder if he's not actually on Ant. Like an Echo Ant deck.
Oh no, he is definitely playing TES, but it's the Neo TES.
So it looks like he's figured out his line here.
Blue potentially indicates Chain of Vapor. There's not going to be another Echo in the sideboard.
So he got his Grape Shot. Can wish for something. Probably a 0 mana spell.
Well, if he has the Grape Shot in hand, he would need a red source.
Maybe a Paddle.
Oh no, he's going to Ponder.
Oh no.
Okay, so this is interesting.
He got it.
That's impressive. Alright, there we go. So, I'm guessing that we should have put the prelate on 2 instead of 4 after seeing a little bit more of his deck list. I was concerned that he would have a main deck win condition, but I don't think he does now.
Okay. So I'm looking at my combo package here. Chalice, Deafening Silence come in. Rip comes in because it's a graveyard-based deck with the echoes. Relic Warders a maybe.
We'll probably end up bringing that in.
Jailer's slow against him.
Swords to Plowshares should come out. That's an easy one. Let's bring in the Relic Warder. Should be one very easy board out here.
It's a mom, isn't it?
What don't you need when your opponent isn't playing creatures? There you go.
61. So just trimming Stoneforge.
Trimming a Stoneforge is fine. Otherwise, trimming a 3-drop is also fine, just because they're slow. So, like, you can... no, Recruiter's very good, because it finds your hate cards. So, for example, a Mirren Crusader isn't particularly effective in this matchup. Yeah, you can hit submit. Note that Rest in Peace isn't actually particularly good against this deck. It's good enough to bring in because we have so many weak cards.
We can make a turn 2 Thalia. Do we keep it?
Yes.
Survey says yes.
The hand is very bad, but, well, the hand is very bad in that you have 2 uncastable cards and probably 3 uncastables because the Relic Warder isn't exactly great either. But we have the ability to beat a Thoughtseize.
And we have unless he just goes for it right here.
I mean, that is what it is.
If he does, he does.
So this will just be ad nauseum from 20. Which should pretty much guarantee a kill.
Yeah.
Opponent needs 1 more artifact for Metalcraft to get the 2nd color. Ooh. Okay.
Alright, now he's got to think a little bit. He actually needs 2 more artifacts there, right? I only see the Opal.
I think we're just getting Goblined. So the Petal will cast the Rite of Flame, giving 2 red. The Opal's just for Storm, then it's Burning Wish. Actually, Tendrils is lethal too. Yep. And so, those sorts of things just happen when you're playing D&T. Like,
yeah, there's not much we could do there. We don't have turn 0 interaction against most combo.
When you're on the play, you have 4 cards that interact with your opponent on turn 1. 2 Deafening Silence, 2 Chalice of the Voids, and I don't think you can throw back the double Thalia hand.
Yeah, it's a risk we take. Like, there was a league last week that I played where I took a hand with 1 land on like a mull to 5, and I would have been fine if I drew another land. Like, it was against Maverick, so I knew I had time. And then I didn't draw a land for 7 turns. And statistically, that wasn't likely. I played against this player before. I should know what they're on.
I believe they're usually graveyard combo. Yeah, dredge.
So against dredge, this hand isn't super exciting.
Well, against dredge, our entire deck isn't exciting. What are you looking for if you don't keep this?
Something with first strike, I guess. I mean, I guess we've got Mom into Stoneforge for Batterskull, which will negate some of the work that he's got, and then we've got a removal spell and a way to shut off things like LED and his other troublesome spells.
So it's not like this hand is amazing or anything, but basically the only thing you can do to stop the combo in game one is hope your opponent fizzles for 2 turns and then play a Thalia. But that's pretty unlikely to happen. You can try to mulligan towards Thalia, or you can just keep a hand and hope that Swords to Plowshares plus killing one of your own creatures with Jitte is enough to get there.
I think we'll keep it.
Especially with the London Mulligan now. Dredge is very consistent about putting a creature into graveyard very quickly.
5, so he's definitely on some combo deck.
Alright, so the Swords of Plowshares will potentially do something.
Do we just wasteland him here? I know that Dredge is usually pretty land light.
So if you wasteland your opponent, you decrease the chance that they will discard something to Putrid Imp and then play Breakthrough or Faithless Looting to get further ahead. However, if you Swords of Plowshares the Putrid Imp, you essentially say you don't get to reuse whatever dredger you have.
Okay, so he's got a bridge.
Okay. So we have stopped our opponent from recycling the troll, but our opponent most likely has a Faithless Looting or a Breakthrough or something now as follow-up. So we're kind of hoping for a little bit of a whiff here. Opponent will get to rediscard 2 trolls now.
Now is it correct to wasteland and put a Mom into play?
Okay, what does wastelanding your opponent do?
It stops them from doing looting shenanigans, careful studying.
Okay. How do you win this game?
I think I win this game by getting. I want to get rid of the bridges, so I need to have one of my creatures gone somehow.
Okay.
And just presenting a big enough clock to negate his clock at some point. So I think the line for that is actually Stoneforge for Batterskull.
Okay. Let's go for it then.
He's only got the 1 card in hand. I'm not going to go for blind name LED.
Yeah, if your opponent had LED, they would have already played it, and you'd already be much closer to death. We're very lucky that opponent has not hit a Narcomoeba yet. So, what are you thinking about?
So I can. I think my line here is that I was still thinking on the wasteland plan because of the land light thing, but I think that my plan is actually to drop a plains and go for Mom and equip, or and drop the Batterskull in.
Yes. So, note that at this point of the game, you're not really considering wasteland anymore, since your opponent is dredging. That means they're not hitting a new card with their draw.
So he's got the Icarus out. There's the Narcomoeba. Ooh, Ox. Okay.
It's a draw 3 that costs them 8 cards from their graveyard.
Therapy. I think this is the point where I just that
So
out.
you should think about whether you're going to put in the Batter Skull or the Jitte. You can always bounce the Batter Skull to kill bridges, so I'd probably put in the Batter Skull. Your opponent also knows you have it,
Yeah,
but it
so
was
it's
something to
gonna be
actually think about. And you can just have 6 from here. You have no other plays this turn.
If he wants to suicide the Icarus into the germ and get rid of his own bridges, he's more than welcome to do that.
So only 2 of the bridges are in the graveyard currently. We're going to lose probably the Jitte to the Cabal Therapy here. Ooh, no.
Well, they went for their own hand.
This is interesting. So now they get to Dread Return the Ox. This is cool. Notably, with the Ox, you discard your hand prior to doing the drawing, so our opponent gets 3 Golgari Grave Troll activations. Now we lose the Jitte. Assuming this one is targeting us. Yes.
Let's see here. The Batter Skull negates 3 of the germs a turn. Or the zombies.
Yeah. But we have other... well, that's actually helpful.
So do we swords and... I think we swords the Hogak and then hold up Batter Skull bounce.
Yeah, so swordsing the Hogak is essentially forced. We can't deal with the trample right now. So we can go ahead and do that. So can we actually hold back Batterskull Bounce? If we do so, I guess we're not dead. How many Icarids are in the yard? 1 Icarid. 1 Icarid. 3 bridges. No therapies. No therapies.
Opponent has used 3 of their 4 therapies already. Alternatively, I could just drop in, just dump my hand out and go from there, but I'm not sure.
It's a tough spot because if you bounce the Batterskull pre-combat, there's 8, 12, there's 14 damage coming in. So if opponent starts sacrificing things to bridge from belows, you're not exactly in a great position. But at the same time, you can't just let them play Icarid, pass the turn after attacking for 2 with Narcomoebas and just sit there. So yeah, I think you need to have your mana available to you. It just feels awful.
Yeah, it just feels real bad. Do you get him with the germ here?
So if you get in with the germ will die if your opponent blocks it, because like they can just throw a crowd of things in front of there and there's no way that you could save it. The question is the germ dying good for you? And the answer is probably yes. So we could have probably attacked there. It's fine though. Let's just go ahead and go to the next turn.
I think I'd rather have it up as a blocker.
We were really hoping to hit the last bridge from below there, but I guess it's kind of whatever.
So the Germ wouldn't have necessarily died that turn if they had blocked it, because we could have given
Okay.
it protection with Mom. Do we just bounce the
So
Germ
I
down
would
and then redeploy the next turn?
so I would go ahead and go to the end step, let the Icarid trigger go on the stack, and then you can bounce the Batterskull.
So opponent just has a handful of
Drudgers.
yeah, they just have a handful of grave trolls that they can't really use.
Certainly don't mind that. So now we have Mom plus Revoker plus put in Batterskull again.
I think that's the line.
I don't think we need to port our opponent to deal 1 damage.
Uh, sorry about that. My
Oh, no worries.
one friend seems to think that I'm not playing or something. I will message him quick.
Yeah, that's fine.
Is there a reason to drop the Batterskull in right now as opposed to?
No, I think you can sandbag it safely. So you have priority. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
You
sorry,
got
the
you got
message
into a
box is
weird
being fickle.
lag scenario there because of the canceled challenge or whatever.
Yeah, my friend has been wanting to play a match against me with goblins here recently.
Okay, so we had a very fortuitous flip there in that the final bridge did not hit the graveyard. Okay, so go ahead and drop the Batterskull, and then we'll do some blocking.
So I think we block there. I think we can block that. That. And do I block with all my moms?
So one of them's not active. So you could block a little bit differently. You could block a mom on the ox, then tap the mom to keep a mom alive, and then just block the germ on something that's not going to die so that you don't have to protect your germ. So,
Um,
sure, like that would be fine.
that's fine.
And you could use a mom to protect the other mom.
Yep. So it's fine to block all those. Red.
So now you're essentially just looking to stay alive. So you gain 4 more life with the attack. Actually, you could equip the Stoneforge or the Mom to make it 5. But I think having another body is probably more valuable. You gain effectively 2 life by changing the equip, but you lose the ability to block one of the Icarids again. Otherwise, the Stoneforge is just
Bridge 3.
so they probably can't. How many Icarids do they have? They have 3 Icarids. They do have 3 things to get rid of. So Batterskull currently gains you 4, so you're effectively at 18 life, assuming you block an Ox and 2 Icarids. You're taking 2, 4, 6, 8, 9, 10, so you're still alive, but you can't really survive multiple turns of this same thing.
Yeah, so I'm definitely not playing the Vial out here. There's no reason not to attack right now with that.
Yep.
So we're actually at 22.
Unless opponent like dredges and just kills themselves. I think we're on the wrong end of the math here. Yeah, and they've just taken a natural draw, realizing that.
So we're staring down 3, 6, 9, 10, 11, 15 plus 8. So 15 plus 8. We block that, obviously, so we're down to 20. 23, so we're down to 19. I think we win this turn. Or, yeah, we don't win this turn, but we can stop the bleeding a little bit and at least survive for the turn.
So if you
Like that.
okay, you can block like that, save your mom. That's fine. So little thing here, but go ahead and tap their City of Brass to deal them 1 damage. That's not great.
So I think we just die here.
Equipping the Mom with Batterskull might have marginally changed things. So we're going to take 9 from Icarids. Well, we're going to take 6 from Icarids. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. No, I guess we live another turn. But barely. This is kind of one of those losing scenarios where they get this attack plus another attack, so I don't know that we have too many outs. You can this turn you could block the Ox of Agonas with
The skull.
Batterskull, block a Mom with Icarid, or you know what I meant.
Yeah.
And just like trade for the Ox. save the mom, then equip the mom with Batterskull if you don't draw Flicker Wisp. But I don't know that the math realistically works out for us. And now there's no point of City of Brassing them because we're either, I mean, you can, but it's either we survive a turn and they mill out, or that's it. Okay, that's what we're looking for. So Wisp resets the Batterskull if we need it to, which we probably do. We can gain 5 life with Mom, putting us to 9. Or we Wisp.
Putting us to 9, putting us to 14 off of the block, too.
So we block an Icarid, then we take 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Which leaves us dead. What if we Flicker Wisp? If we Flicker Wisp, we block 2 Icarids and a zombie. We're at 8. We take 2, 4, 6, 8 and are exactly dead. Hold on. There aren't enough targets in the graveyard now. There's just 2 Icarids in the graveyard. So there's no other black creatures. So if we equip Batterskull, we're at 9. Then my opponent returns 1 Icarid. We block the Icarid. We go up to 14 and take 2, 4, 6, 8, 9, 10. So double check me, but I think Batterskull equip on Mom gets us there.
So go up to 14 basically. 1 Icarid can go out, block that. 1, 2, not 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. Yeah. And just representing swords with the untapped mana.
That's fine.
It's a triviality, but
I mean, you can also just
something.
wasteland your opponent if you wanted, but you know it's kind of moot.
Yeah.
Notably, though, like 4 turns ago when you could have played the Ether Vial but didn't, and then didn't play the Ether Vial in subsequent turns, we potentially could have had a Flicker Wisp here as well.
Yeah.
Alright. Yeah, so we'll just block the Icarid. And don't even tap your mom. Don't give the opportunity for something to go wrong. Alright. There we go. Win via mill against Dredge.
Cool. So, sideboarding against Dredge. I don't know. I've heard that Rest in Peace might be good against them.
Pretty okay, yeah. Same with any other card that interacts with the graveyard ever.
So don't we want? We don't want Jailer because they go wide of us.
I agree with that. So conceptually, I find it useful to pile in all the things that you're going to board in first, and then cut cards until you've hit the appropriate number of cards to cut.
Okay. I feel like I want a Cataclysm just in case something goes wrong.
Okay. Do you think you win if you cast Cataclysm?
Yeah, if I cast it at the right time, because then I can nuke bridges. No, then they just bring back Icarids.
So a lot of times when I think about Cataclysm, I think about the number of times it is going to effectively win me the game on the spot if it resolves. And versus decks like Lands and Dredge that can operate out of their graveyard, Cataclysm is often a speed bump, not a finisher. So I don't know that I love trying Cataclysm. I think I like the fairies, though. Let's get those in there. So what don't you like versus Dredge? Okay, I can see those being slow. That's fair. Do I still have audio? I cannot hear you. Did you get muted? Oh, there we go. I hear you again. Or at least your microphone.
I'm gonna plug the mic in. The
Okay.
headset might be dying.
30 seconds. I would pull some of your 3 drops and maybe the Sword of Fire and Ice.
Okay, and I don't think there are a ton of great Revoker targets.
It's Lion's Eye Diamond. It's less good on the draw. You can pull one of those if you want. That's totally fine. It's a question of, do you want to be able to shut off LED versus do you want flyers that can go over a zombie wall?
This hand doesn't do anything against them, really.
That is correct. Easy mulligan. Easy mulligan. Hand's great.
So I think we throw back Batterskull.
Yep.
And
take your pick of land 3 or path. I would probably throw back the path.
So we definitely play Rip turn 2.
Yeah.
We just windmill that.
Okay.
Okay, so we're getting Narcomoebid already. But we're also getting rid of a Troll and a Rip next turn.
So we're mostly just afraid of our opponent casting a Breakthrough or Faithless Looting, and then Cabal Theory being Rip blind, which is the most likely thing that they would do. So our opponent is going to discard their hand, or at least most of their hand, go down to 7 in Graveyard, and then activate Cephalid Coliseum. They have 2 Dredgers. There's the Therapy. And a second Therapy, so we are going to lose both Rip and Thalia in all likelihood.
Yeah.
Our opponent may also dread return a Troll. Probably not.
Yeah, so they've got Thalia, and we're left with a handful of lands.
Yep, it's
It is what it is. It happens.
Yep.
Uh,
I would just play the Jitte and pass.
Yeah, we just play it. There's no reason not to. It's the most mana efficient thing we can do at this moment.
Actually, we're taking 14 this turn as of right now. I would go ahead and concede. Just save your clock here. We spent a lot of time in that game 1. Okay, now that you're on the play, you're going to want to change how you sideboarded. You're going to want that Revoker back in for sure. And you can start considering things like Chalice of the Void and Deafening Silence when you're on the play. Deafening Silence is like kind of whatever. It essentially just lets you play around like Faithless Looting LED hands.
Yeah.
But Chalice on 0 or 1 early can be pretty decent. So you can probably relatively safely drop like 2-ish Flicker Wisps. And potentially like a Stoneforge from your deck without really hurting anything. Maybe we don't play the Silences and we just play the Chalices. The Deafening Silence is essentially just good on their turn 1. Like, it can technically do other things, but I kind of like this.
And we will just wax a mid on that then. So
I'd,
Scat
I'd,
doesn't do a ton against them.
I'd send
I'm
it
not
back.
sure if I'd keep it. That looks better.
Yeah, you have to question whether or not you actually want to keep it. It's not like it's insane. Like, you don't have a piece of graveyard hate. You're hoping that Thalia and Stoneforge and Mom is good enough. If you want to continue to mulligan, you can probably find something that is as good as this by continuing to mulligan. But I'll leave that final call up to you.
I think that if we survive the opening turns with this hand, it sets us up pretty nicely for a late game. So I think I'm going to keep it.
Sure. Toss back a redundant Mom.
Yeah, toss back the second Mom. There's no need.
So, by keeping this hand, you're essentially saying, I'm hoping to play Thalia, followed by Wasteland my opponent, and keep my opponent from ever casting spells again.
Of note, they have mulled to 3.
Yeah, but LED Faithless Looting Dredger is a real good 3.
True. Just drop Thalia here.
Yeah, that's fine. And you can attack for 1 safely. Yeah. Dredge is not... Mana Dredge is usually not playing removal for your creatures.
I should not be yielding in case I should be pretending to have something.
Yeah. Sure.
Okay. You can certainly try that.
Opponent highly respecting Recruiter for Fairy in particular. So go ahead and knock the opponent off a land here. And yeah, you can send them both. That's fine again.
Re-attack. And then we can have a nice long chat about whether we Stoneforge for Jite or Batterskull or just hold up the swords at this moment.
I would play a card. I would play the Stoneforge.
I think Batterskull's probably just our best bet.
Sure.
It jumps our life total. It chumps most of what they have.
Yeah, we were essentially just looking to fade a Narcomoeba there from our opponent. So I would set a stop on your opponent's draw step, just in case we need to do something there. And you can send in Mom and Thalia. So we can let them go to the draw step, see if they flip a Narcomoeba. They don't, so you'll want to source the Plowshares, the Icarid, before your opponent can... it costs you another mana. Before your opponent can Cabal Therapy.
Getting those two.
Yep, that's fine. And so now we have the same line essentially available to us again, where if our opponent flips Narcomoeba, we source the Plowshare it. Otherwise, we deploy the Batterskull.
Yep. So there's a non-go.
Yep, and this is why we have the draw step stop. How many bridges does your opponent have? 2. Okay. Just keep in mind for later that we can legend rule our own Thalia. But I think we're putting in the Batter Skull this turn in all likelihood.
Yeah.
For real this time.
No, seriously, this time it's happening, guys, I promise.
Yeah, and they missed a creature. That is the end of the game. Because we are now presenting lethal. Alright, there we go. Easy. Well, not easy. That first game was a total slog. Yeah, back in it we go. We are playing against Kia. I don't know what he's been playing recently.
I don't either, but I don't think we can keep this.
You're not keeping that hand. It's the curse of multiple Caraxes. This hand, on the other hand, is absolute gas.
And then do we put back Vial 2, or...
Vial 2 is probably the safest putback. The hand's way worse without a Vial, but you don't necessarily want a second one unless your opponent is playing a counterspell deck.
Yeah.
I think your opponent has been playing lands, maybe. I want to say he donated for me to play a lands deck, yeah.
Yep.
And loam, and loam. That's okay. We need opponent not to find a quick depths.
So good news, they didn't hit a depths this turn.
Bad news, they found a different win condition. I don't know if you played against Field of the Dead before, but it is a house.
Once or twice, just enough to know that I don't like it.
We're also going to get ported off of casting anything relevant.
We don't need the draw step stop anymore.
No. So, long term, what's your current plan?
So we just kind of power things out with the vial. If we can get the vial up to 3, we can wisp any kind of Merit Blade shenanigans that they make.
Okay. Yeah, just pass the turn. No.
Recruiter to theoretically get us Prelate for 2 to stop Loam
and Punishing Fire, which
He's
thankfully
fine.
your opponent did not hit this turn. However, as soon as next turn, Field of the Dead can be active. Second loam. No dredge on the thicket, though. So, what does no dredge indicate to you?
No dredge indicates to me that they have something else they'd like to do with that mana right now.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah, that indicates to me either the green/red mana was already spoken for, or they would very specifically like to draw something like an exploration or crop rotation.
Sure.
So that's actually not too bad.
That means we could. Do we just dump Thalia in our end step here? I don't hate that. That makes anything they try
Sure.
to do.
Yeah, go for it. It's one of those things that is relatively unlikely to make a huge difference at this point in the game, but it's fine to do so. What are you going to do with your port?
I think I'm gonna try and get them off of their own port
I agree with that.
and open up my white source.
So this line opens you up to hard casting your recruiter and putting in prelate on 2.
I was tempted initially just on instinct to go for the stage, but stage could copy the forest or the plains, and then just. No, I'm sorry, I was thinking of wasteland. So yeah, that is actually just the best play, is stopping them from.
That wasteland is unfortunate for us. It means we don't get to recruiter and wisp in the same turn unless we rip another land. It also means that our ports aren't really safe moving forward.
Right now, I'm just thinking of the. Oh, it's the spirit. The 2-drop spirit that sacks the graveyard.
Oh, Remorseful Cleric?
Yeah, that I took out of the deck last night.
Oh, that's fine. That card is not usually fantastic. In my experience, I found that a lot of times anything that Remorseful Cleric does, Sanctum Prelate also does.
Mm-hmm.
So, what's your game plan? How do you win? Recruiter is step 1. Recruiter for Prelate. But what needs to come after that for you to win?
So after that, I need to find a way to deal with the Mazavith. Or, no, I want to get rid of the field first. I can deal with the Mazavith other ways.
Correct.
So I want to deal with their WinCon. Okay.
Missing that land is rough.
Yeah.
You should probably just deploy the Stoneforge. You're going to get stuck on mana anyway between the wasteland and the port. So like might as well use this to get I guess the Batter Skull. It's better if you get multiple planes because you can put it in during your upkeep and not need main phase stuff.
Yeah. And then Prelate comes in on their end step.
No, on your next turn.
Or No, recruiter goes in on their end step,
Correct.
gets the prelate, and then comes in with the my turn.
Okay. Opponent now has a ghost quarter. So there are worlds where your opponent can run you out of basic lands. That is not usually something that happens, but it is something that needs to be on your radar. You will probably die to zombies long before your opponent gets rid of all your lands. Might be worth just saying always yes to Field of the Dead next time it triggers.
Yeah, probably. Is it possible that I should be dumping in the recruiter on their attack step if they try and swing out and use it as a blocker? Because it'll have already served its purpose, or do you think it's better to have it back for Flicker Wisp reasons?
Seeing as you have the Wisp in hand, I think the recruiter has a lot of value.
Okay.
Alright.
Oh, that's devastating.
Sure is. That follow-up stage is even worse.
Don't know why they didn't attack there. It feels like
Well, there's no need to throw away zombie bodies until they have a horde, right? Because they could lose a zombie for no reason this turn. Or they can just wait and make the same attack next turn and push more actual damage through.
more.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay. Not be taking up that vial. There's that other planes that I wanted.
Alright, so life's bad, but we haven't lost.
Yeah.
That's the current situation.
So we're not in the worst position I've been against this deck before, but we're also not in the best.
Yes, this is definitely the I've been in worse spots situation. But not too many worse spots than this. When it was just one Field of the Dead, it was totally reasonable to beat it.
Now there are 3.
In the Maze of Ith presents a whole nother problem, because normally you could just try to like suit up a Flicker Wisp with a Batter Skull eventually.
But that is not a plan right now.
Not a plan right now. I mean, you get to take out 2 zombies. That's fine. You can, well, figure it out. You got it.
So I can dump a prelate in front of one of them. I
Mhm.
want to keep this. I kind of want to keep that. Mum protects the prelate.
Yep, there you go. And we don't really have the luxury of playing around any random non-punishing fire removal spell our opponent might have or anything. Okay, so the one blocking Thalia has been removed from combat. Not surprising.
I'm going to get in for 8. I'll just take that opportunity to dump the batter skull.
Yep.
So the batter skull can attack, but then it's 2 zombie bodies. That's nothing.
I mean, you can attack with the batter skull, and if your opponent blocks, you just give it protection, and it essentially gives you a little more life to work with. So like it's fine. Otherwise, Mom is just saving you 2 damage defensively. Oh no, sorry. The batter skull is something sickness due to being put in your upkeep. So no attacks.
Okay. Then, at their second main phase, I Flicker Wisp my Recruiter, I think.
Yeah.
And then I'm not sure what I grab.
That'll actually be a good question. It might just be another Flicker Wisp to try to get bodies in the air. It could just be a Crusader to try and play towards.
Eat some zombies.
Well, to try to play towards a Jitte line. One of the biggest issues here is that like you're not getting mana in your main phase ever.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's bad. Our opponent now probably has access to Dark Depths or Tabernacle. Tabernacle is the answer.
Tabby. So is the answer to actually just whisk that?
Well, what does that get you? Like it gets you 1 turn with all your stuff. This is a disaster.
Yeah.
This is probably the point where you're not going to beat them, and it may be worth just conceding to save your clock.
To save clock and information a little bit.
Yeah. So like
not a ton, but
your opponent can pay for 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 zombies. You can pay for 2 things, have a 3rd creature in the form of Flicker Wisp. You're gonna get ground into the dust. So
yeah. Okay. And I think I'm actually gonna wisp the Recruiter now. There's not really a reason not to, and it'll get me the card that it otherwise wouldn't be, while also saving me the 2 life from that block.
sure.
No,
I don't think you have any outs.
Yeah, I'm just dead.
Yeah.
Alright, so against lands, I have go down 3 swords, and I did have drop the Mirroring Crusader, but that was before Field of the Dead.
So again, I want to encourage you to think about the cards you're going to bring in first, because that lets you know how many things you need to take out.
So Cataclysm's in. They can just deal with so much stuff. I want those in. Rest in Peace in for the low man to the P Fire engine.
Okay.
After that, I can consider Chalices. Those and the CJs are a maybe. Fairies also come in. So they play enough lands that Path is definitely getting them something.
How many basics do they play?
Actually,
1 or
2 or
2, right?
3.
Then they usually fetch them pretty early. I'm just saying, that's another instant speed answer to a Merit Lodge.
That one doesn't drain me or give them 20 life. So what?
You're definitely boarding in too many cards as of right now.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Your chalices are too weak.
I think they're too slow. I'm never going to get a chalice on 2.
You're definitely not going to want to board in 3 Council's Judgments. That's a lot. You may end up boarding like 1, maybe 2.
Yeah, so.
I personally don't board Cataclysm in this matchup.
Really?
I do not. They rebuild faster than we do. So I'm of the opinion that Cataclysm is only good if Rest in Peace is also involved. We can play it if you want, but I'm not sold on it. Under 30 seconds. So do what you want to do for some boarding out.
So Jailers seems bad. They go way wide of us.
Revokers are medium, Jittes are medium. You do want to click submit, no matter what, even if you play more cards. Because otherwise you don't sideboard. Okay.
Not a super exciting hand.
Probably good enough to keep. Yeah, it's not impressive, and we're playing too many cards right now. But that's okay.
Yeah. So we just go for our best line.
The hand's not really where you want to be for the matchup, but it's also not bad enough to throw back, since you have 2 mana denial elements, an alternative threat, an answer to an early Merit Lodge, and 2 basics for if opponent is on a wasteland start.
Yeah. Oh my. Okay. So that's how this is going.
That smells like a loam. Yep. So, opponent. Oh, God.
Oh, they're just going to get that out now?
Sure are.
Okay. Our sweet little vial up to 1. And we'll pass the turn.
Are you going to pass the turn, or are you going to play Thalia?
I think Thalia might be the better line, actually, because if they produce the Lage, it's going to come in tapped, or with Summoning Sickness, so it's not going to do anything this turn at least.
Right. So your Thalia only will bite you in the butt if your opponent has Rishadan Port. If they get a Rishadan Port and they gain the ability to like tap down one of your lands so that you can't hold up like Path and Swords and whatnot, then it's a little bit punishing. But I kind of think that you need to do something to prevent them from just like playing a very patient game with Loam and beating you that way.
Yeah. So you said something interesting to me here while we were in sideboarding.
Mm-hmm.
You said that you usually take out your Jitte.
Mm-hmm.
I have historically kept it in just because if I get it, I can gain life off of it potentially and dodge the Lage side of the deck for a turn.
Okay.
Do we attack here?
Yeah.
I don't see why we wouldn't. End of their turn, we're going to get Stoneforge for a Batterskull.
Mm-hmm. So I'd float the mana there. No, never mind. It's okay.
In our attack step?
Yeah, because they could have potentially made the Merit Lodge. It's not that big of a deal. It's just one of those things you wanna represent
It's good
things.
practice.
Okay.
You sure do make a merit life, my friend. Wait, golly gee, that is a merit life. Or is it a forest?
Yeah. There's a real conversation to be had there about whether or not you use the Swords of Plowshares or the Path to Exile. I think I like the Path, but it's
Yeah,
close.
I don't know. I know that we went through damage, and winning through 38 points of damage versus 18 seems a little more difficult.
Yeah. The thing about giving them the Path, though, is that it gives them the third land for Life from the Loam. And, like,
They
if
have
they
the
don't
engines,
have the
yeah.
other land already, you may be able to dodge a turn.
Okay, so they're going to be porting me on my upkeep.
And you're going to be producing a Batter Skull.
Uh, I think we took the vial up. Our best cards against them are on 3,
That's fair.
and we've played 2 of our 11 2-drops already. Whereas we have plenty of things just sitting at 3 waiting to go.
We also need to represent the Wisp. So a problem with current hand is that we can be ported off of Swords to
Killing
Plowshares.
Yeah.
Tracker Croson Grip. Croson Grip on Vial would be kind of disgusting. It just eliminates a lot of outs.
Force on both, though,
It's pretty good.
I think does a little better. So good news, they're not making the Merit Lage this turn.
Bad news, everything else.
Yeah. So I think that because they're not producing the Lage this turn, or if they are, it's at least not going to
Yeah, you need to play out that Vial.
immediately stop anything. I'm playing the Vial.
Your life is not good right now. So you need to work towards a future where you have outs
What
to
can be
Merit
done?
Lodges. Because you're going to need to keep answering them until you find a Rest in Peace or a Sanctum Prelate. So is that a Field of the Dead? That was a Field of the Dead.
Yeah, we've got a Field of Grove and another Wasteland.
Those are all the things we don't want to see because the opponent also has Punishing Fire in the yard already. So
What happens here? They can kill the Thalia this turn.
they have all the time in the world. It's now a matter of how carefully does the opponent play this game and how patiently.
Mm-hmm. Do I have a reason not to attack with at least the Thalia here?
You could attack with the Thalia if you want. That's fine. Thalia dying somehow also wouldn't be the worst thing for us.
Yeah, if she happens to have an accident somewhere. So life is getting better. Opponent can do that.
So
I can protect my. I can protect something with Mom after next turn.
yeah. So we take this opportunity to kill the Merit Lodge while our opponent is basically tapped out. Not 100%, but they can't crop rot for a Sajiri step or something if they were randomly playing that. Honestly, if I were in the opponent's position, I don't know that I would have necessarily
Avoided
just
that
gone
right
for
there.
it. I might have just started grinding through the creatures. I can understand the desire to just go for it, since I can either go for it every turn or every other turn, depending on what other actions they take.
So what we really need here is, I think we need to get ourselves a flyer here in the pretty near future.
Kind of our issue is that we don't have too many things. Yeah, you can put that in. You don't have too many things which actually put you into a winning position in just a single draw step. You really require multiple cards to get where you need to go.
Yeah.
And your opponent has all the tools to stop you.
So
Opponent does not have access to Wasteland yet, right?
yes, they do.
Oh no, they do, but it's tapped. I guess that's cool.
So Thalia does not go in this turn.
Yeah, at this point, you're not winning the game via aggro.
Yeah. They actually drew off of the thicket cycle there.
So you can bounce that if you want, rather than tap the mom, since your opponent can't make a Merit Lodge now on the end step.
That seems fine.
So tiny thing there. You should have activated your Ether Vial, held priority, and then bounced with Caracas. Because if the opponent had a, say, Force of Vigor and green card, you would have given them the opportunity to eat the Ether Vial while the Thalia was still in play.
I see.
Super minor, and it probably wasn't going to come up in that spot, but again, good habits. You wanna build them.
I think I just dumped the Thalia back out again.
Yeah.
So that P-Fire's done. Next turn, they definitely waste that Caracas. I can still swords the next depth that comes up.
Yeah. You are also at 21 now.
So I can survive a hit from it.
Technically, that's
It
true.
doesn't feel great, but
Punishing Fire is the problem. So opponent can give you 1 life with Grove to return 2 Punishing Fires and then burn you out. So you're technically not surviving a Merit Lodge hit with the other stuff they have going on. um, So I want to take this opportunity to ask you now, do you still like bringing in Cataclysm in this matchup? Just kind of like seeing how this game has played out. It's turn 7 now. Would you win if you cast a Cataclysm?
No.
Right. So your opponent would keep probably like Forest Mox Diamond. Then as soon as they rip one land, they cast a Loam, redeploy 2 lands, and then they get 2 more lands every turn for the rest of the game. This is kind of why I'm not too big on that card in this matchup. They just rebuild so much faster unless you have Rest in Peace or unless you Surgical Loam or something like that.
Yeah. Right, so now we are representing a Wisp off of the Vial.
Yeah. So this is the point where the opponent has basically said, nah, I don't need to Dark Depths. I don't need to walk into that again. And they've just chosen to grind you into dust via zombies.
Yeah.
Field of the Dead is so good versus D&T.
Yeah, it takes a grindy game and turns it into a go wide strategy, which is something that we've just always had trouble with.
Well, the other thing that it's done is how much damage has Field of the Dead soaked up now? At least 9? I haven't been counting it, but it's probably between 9 and 12 damage now. I think 9.
Yeah. Yeah, that feels like the end of the game.
Yeah, I would say take one more draw. And if that draw isn't something like Sanctum Prelate or Rest in Peace Caliber, it's time to just call it.
Yeah, they got 7. We got 12 of those.
They've got
zombies
28
on the
power
board.
worth of zombies. Yeah. So you have a little bit of life to work with, but all right. I think we throw in the towel there.
Yeah, that's not going to do it.
So yeah, go ahead and concede. But before we start the next game, will you just pull up the deck list again?
Sure.
Since you were unsure about sideboarding, I want to go back and like sideboard properly, so that we have a little bit more time to talk through it. So will you just like put the 4 left cards? Like, will you put like the Path, Rip, Relic Order? Will you just move those over into another column?
Sure.
Yeah. So let's think about what you would want to bring in for this matchup now. So like seeing that play out again, what do you want?
So I definitely want that.
Okay.
And I definitely want the rips. That got funky.
Scroll down. If you look down, you've shifted the bar to the, yeah, there you go. Thank you, Moda. If you want to drag the vertical bar that's kind of by Batterskull, if you drag that left, you can just give your sideboard more room.
Yeah.
And that should stop some of those problems.
Isn't Microsoft Excel, I mean Modo, a beautiful program?
It's the best we've got.
So like those. Deafening Silence. on the play might be okay
Why?
because it answers some of their more explosive game plans. It slows them down off of like double monks, diamond, exploration, loam, herpaderpaderp.
Okay. Is that worth a card?
Uh, Looking at what else we're working with in the main deck, so I don't love the recruit or the revokers. They don't have any actual impact. Uh, the jailer, similarly, they go wide of us half the time. We don't want that. Uh, so we're currently at break even on those, and then we're considering 2 more cuts. Jite.
So my thoughts on Jitte in that matchup are, if you are going to spend 2 mana to put a piece of equipment in, you probably want Batter's Cult for a threat. And if you're going to spend 4 mana to put in a piece of equipment and equip it, don't you want to be protecting something from Sword of Fire and Ice?
Right.
My thought is yes. So I think Jitte is the weakest piece of equipment in that matchup.
In which case, if we're going down to 2 of the equipment and we've still got recruiters to go for more stone forges, I feel fine trimming down to 3 stone forges for the
So here's my thoughts on Deafening Silence. On average, how many spells is your opponent casting a turn?
usually 1 or 2. After turn 2, I'd say they're either just casting Loam or P-Fire, possibly P-Firing twice if the Galer's long.
Okay. So it's turn 1 on the play. You have Ether Vial and Deafening Silence. Which would you rather play?
Probably Ether Vial.
Okay.
It advances our game plan more.
It's turn 1. You have Deafening Silence and Mom, and then you have something that you want to protect. Which are you going to want to play more, Mom or Deafening Silence?
Mom.
Okay. So what turn is Deafening Silence good on?
A turn where we're keeping a hand of like Thalia, something we want to protect or something, just a hate card, Thalia, Prelate, and Grip, and just not a turn 1 play.
Okay. On average, how many turns do you think the lands versus D&T matchup goes?
Say 10 to 15 if
I
they're not
agree with that.
hitting.
So, do you want to play the card that is good primarily on turn 1 when you're on the play in a long grindy matchup?
No. You want something that's going to be good in the late game too if you draw it.
I agree. So, if I was going to bring in more sideboard cards, I would be thinking about Council's Judgment or Relic Order. Council's Judgment can hit random things that are in play, such as a Mox if things get real weird, but normally something like a Library, a Molten Vortex, a Tireless Tracker. I don't hate bringing in a Council's Judgment, and Relic Order is fine to consider as well.
Relic Order similarly gets explorations, it gets or libraries.
Yeah, there you go. I do want to try to change your mind about one of the cards in the matchup, though. I want to try to change your mind about Palace Jailer.
Okay.
So the games are going super, super long, right?
Right.
And your opponent has essentially more card draw than you do. It's not literally card draw, but your opponent has a greater degree of
They
card
have
advantage.
better advantage.
So what's your way to keep up? A Recruiter for Palace Jailer on an empty board is really strong. Palace Jailer in a pinch is also another instant speed answer to a Merit Lodge. It clears the board of a Tireless Tracker. So it is a mana-intensive card, but given how long the games go, I think that card's fine to keep in your deck. So I might rather have Palace Jailer in the deck than one of the extra copies of Thalia. As we saw that game, your Thalias can be kind of awkward in this matchup.
Because we want to be hitting all of our one-drop spells, and they can be porting and wastelanding us back.
Yeah. So Thalia, when you're on the play and you stick it on turn 2, can sometimes gum up your opponent's game plan. But it's not always necessarily going to do what you want, and sometimes it will work against you. So this is a matchup where I frequently do trim Thalia. You can also consider trimming a swords since you're bringing in a path. You still probably want at least 4 answers to Merit Lodge, but depending on your 75, you may or may not actually want the 5th.
Yeah. So I've gone through about half of that liter and a half of water that I told you about before we started. I have to go to the bathroom.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm gonna go ahead and take a second and do the same then. So YouTube folks, skip about a minute or 2 ahead. Alright, I am back, although I assume that I have beaten you back. That is correct. So YouTube folks, if you're listening to this part still, I hope you're enjoying this tutoring session. Kind of, as you can see, while you're doing these tutoring sessions, you do play a little bit slower than normal. It's really easy to go and miss things while you're talking over lines. I don't know how many of you are actually streamers yourself, but like when you're talking over lines, it's way easier to miss stuff than normal. But the Innistrad Revenue Service is doing pretty well thus far. It's really easy to get distracted while talking over your plays. We are seeing some of the awkwardness of the current metagame in some of the matches that we're playing, in that we kind of have a very focused sideboard for specific things. Like, we have all these Council Judgments and Cataclysms and Deafening Silences and Chalices, but they aren't particularly generic cards. So, in a time where we want more generic cards, we don't always have them. So, for example, against lands, there's Surgical Extraction, which has been a staple of the deck in the past. Innistrad Revenue Service is opting to play Fairy instead, since it's better against Breach, but it puts us in a little bit of a worse position here. But c'est la vie, so it goes. I'm also trying to, like, grab my mouse and interact with the things on this Moto screen because it's usually where I'm streaming, but it is not my screen. So that's that. I'd shoot the bull about current events a little bit, but this is probably going to go into my backlog, and I'll upload this on a day where I can't stream for one reason or another. So, that's tricky. I also have super secret things that I could talk about, but they would probably be public by the time that this video went live. So, that is what it is. InnistradRevenueService is currently a college student, so he probably had to make a trip down the hall to use the restroom. Womp, womp. Public restrooms for the lose. I respect InnistradRevenueService legacy decks. 2, streaming deck. That's this one. And D&T New Sword. I'm assuming is that Sword of Truth and Justice over there.
Yep, it
Nice.
is. I just came back. Actually, before this, I had this deck named Big Eldrazi, just in case I somehow 5-0'd with it. So that somebody goldfishing me at a glance would just see Big Eldrazi and they hopefully mulligan into a hand that was poorer against us.
So, funny thing about that, MTG Goldfish, which is where most people look for those sorts of things, the deck name that is with there is not the deck name that's associated with your MTGO account deck name. It's a deck name that someone else manually gives it. So there are people who, when all those deck lists go through, they go through and sort them. And that's why a lot of the decks end up with very, very strange names. I don't know to what degree that process is automated, but I know for some of them, it's manually done.
Big Eldrazi playing Mother of Runes at Aether Vial.
So, for example, here's some of my results from the past. When you play something that's weird, it just gets a name, like white-black. That was probably like a black-white D&T deck that someone didn't know what to do with. Oh, no, excuse me, that was Soldiers Down B that someone didn't know what to do with.
Nice.
Okay, so current thoughts on your play patterns so far. Do you play mostly in paper or mostly online?
I've been playing mostly online here. I played D&T in paper for Legacy exactly one time.
Okay.
For the Baltimore Team Open last year, and then promptly sold the deck off because I needed to buy a new car.
Yeah, I get that. But generally speaking, not just like D&T, do you play more paper Magic or more online Magic?
Definitely more online. We have a club on campus that plays, and once in a while I'll go to that, but they mostly play EDH, and while I like Magic, I don't like Magic as long as a game of Monopoly.
Yeah, totally understandable. Okay, let's go ahead and queue up and I'll talk about some things while we wait. So a couple of times this league, I've seen you start to take some actions before you had sort of the entire rest of the turn planned out. So that would be something I'd encourage you to work on, is make sure that you have a clear game plan for how you want the turn to unfold, because a lot of times you need to be thinking about, am I porting, am I wastelanding, how am I using my mana, what do I need to be holding back? And so you can keep everything straight. Sometimes you need to just take a little bit more time in one chunk and say, this is what I'm doing for this turn, and then once you have it figured all out, take your actions. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. What do you think of this opening hand?
I think we're hoping to play against a fair deck.
I agree.
blind, I'd be willing to keep it. We have
Oh, yeah. Just snap keep,
Vile
unquestionably.
easily. We have Vile. We have like an early Delver or something.
Yeah.
We have Disruption.
No even bluffing of a counterspell there.
I can respect it.
Red Prison?
Probably Red Prison.
We have an okay hand versus Red Prison.
Yeah, Prison. Okay.
Oh, please don't Chandra us on turn 1.
No, they just go for a lattice already.
So the good news is this is a good matchup. The bad news
is they're on a really strong start that we don't have interaction for immediately.
That is correct.
I was going to say, I've played against Prison a couple of times in the past. I'm not sure how much of it was just the opponent's inexperience or my own experience against the deck, but I've always felt kind of favored going against it. So,
all right, what's your game plan?
So we can port them here, and then next turn we can wisp out the Karn and dump in the Stone Forge.
Okay.
Alternatively, we just Stone Forge now, and then so getting SoFi off the Stone Forge, that's no question.
Well, we'll reevaluate that in a minute.
Yeah.
I think you're going to disagree with your...
I think my next move is just go to match 4. Maybe.
Okay.
He was afraid. He had the fear of the basic planes.
I mean, sometimes you see this. Let's not go into the next match yet. So let's think about this. So you were telling me that you were thinking about Sword of Fire and Ice, but that's actually a very bad idea. Why?
Because that is 4 mana that we could be using in, or versus a Batterskull, for example. It's 2 extra mana that we could be using to, say, port.
Okay.
By the time we equip.
Walk me through how you got the Stoneforge into play again.
So I could put the Stoneforge into play just this turn and not port them and link them with 3 up to 5 mana, probably.
Okay. But the other line you were talking about was wisp out Karn, tap Vile, put in Stoneforge.
Yeah, and have the city tap down for their turn 2.
Uh-huh. So Flicker Wisp ability reads, return that permanent back to play at the beginning of the next end step. So if you were to get Sword of Fire and Ice, you would not be able to equip that.
Ice on the field, but it wouldn't do anything.
Correct. So in this situation, you would pretty much assuredly be getting Batterskull. All right. Before we go into that next match, let's go back to your deck list and let's talk about how we would have sideboarded for that matchup, because I think it's very interesting.
Yeah, so against Red Prison, there's everything there.
Okay.
So we don't want chalices against them because they're also a chalice deck.
I agree with that.
Survey says that's bad. Fairy Macabre doesn't do anything really against them. Deafening Silence doesn't do a ton. I'd probably bring in the Relic Warder.
Okay.
And some number of the Council's judgments just as answers to things like the Karns, the Chandras, the problem permanents that we have to go up against.
Okay. So you're looking to bring in 4 cards?
Yep.
Okay. Would you read Cataclysm to me?
Each player chooses from among permanents they control an artifact, creature, enchantment, and land, then sacrifices the rest.
Okay. And what type is not listed on that card?
Planeswalker.
Okay. So you were just telling me that you were scared of Chandras and Karns. So wouldn't you want more answers to those cards?
I would, but I'm hedging against them already with the double prelate, so prelates would go on 3 or 4, depending on what I'm seeing out of the opponent so far.
Okay.
Probably 4.
Mm-hmm.
And I also have the 3 revokers for naming their planeswalkers and recruiters to get those.
Okay. So D&T is good against Red Prison. What scenarios do you see yourself losing the matchup?
I've seen myself lose to the one goblin, just a goblin start off of them.
Okay.
Which is why initially I had planned just out the 4 swords,
Okay.
but now I think it's actually correct to leave 2 in at least.
Sure.
Just for those starts, because they usually have 1 or 2 and then you answer it and then you get to go on about your day.
Okay. So what else would you be thinking about boarding out?
So I've been, in the past, I think I've boarded out. I think I'm okay to trim a land.
Sure.
And I think I've been trimming a Jite.
That's fair.
Alternatively, Crusader comes out.
Okay. So if you are going to do 4 and just bring in the Relic Orders and Council's Judgments, you have 5 cards there that you could be looking at boarding out. And that seems totally fine. This is also a matchup where you can consider adjusting play versus draw. And you can also consider adjusting depending on your opponent's play style. So for example, let's say you win game 1, you have a super long game 2 and you don't see any creatures, and you deduce, hey, my opponent's game plan is win via ensnaring bridges, planeswalkers, and direct damage. You can then board those Swords of the Plowshares out and lean more on things like Cataclysm.
Right.
I do think Cataclysm is very good in the matchup, because an easy way to lose involves ensnaring bridge and Chandra or other Chandra or Karn hiding behind it. You have... Can you see my cursor? No, right?
No.
Okay. So you have Flicker Wisps, you have Relic Order, and Council Judgment to answer the bridge. So you have a decent number of answers, but that's an easy way to lose. And
Right.
Cataclysm just gives you more outs to that. So when we were talking about Cataclysm for lands and dredge, we sort of decided that they would rebuild faster than us. But what about here? Let's say you're both hellbent. Who do you think is going to rebuild faster, the D&T player or the Red Prison player?
Probably the D&T player.
Yeah.
We have a couple of cards that cantrip or effectively cantrip.
You also need fewer lands to do your stuff. You can put a Vial in play, and off 1 land, you've recovered. You can get a Rishadan Port and make it much harder for them to recover. You can get a Wasteland and make it harder for them to recover. So I think you will rebuild faster than them in the vast majority of cases. All right, does that all make sense?
Yeah, so then I'm looking at it here on the let's say we're on the draw, or let's say we're on the play game 3, and we haven't seen anything from them that would indicate creatures. So I
Okay.
want my other factory if I'm bringing in
A
5
whole bunch of
spells that
expensive
start at
cards.
3 and are only made more expensive with Thalia.
Yeah. So say you didn't see any creatures in game 2, and the game went relatively long, then I would be comfortable boarding something like that. Now, if you did see creatures, then things get a little more interesting.
Yeah.
But something to think about is that when you're on the play, the goblins aren't nearly as threatening. Stoneforge beats goblins. You go land, they go land. You go Stoneforge, they go turn to Soul Land Goblin. You're winning that. You go land, they go land. You go Thalia, they go Goblin. They're sad. The Goblin starts are scariest when they're on the play.
Yeah.
Alright, shall we go into the next match?
I think we shall.
Okay. Something like Delver would be nice.
I would love to bully some poor Delver player right now. So I think I'm just going to take a second here while we're waiting on them to make a decision, or maybe look at me and see that I don't have any results because I'm good at this game.
It's hard to get your deck list published if you're playing D&T, because so many of the lists are similar. So, like, I haven't had a D&T list published with September, and I've 5-0'd with D&T plenty of times. Well, not plenty, a couple times.
15 cards different, right?
Yeah.
Something like that. So this hand's a mulligan.
Is it? I'm asking you to defend your decision. It's an actual question. Is this hand a mulligan?
This hand isn't fast enough to deal with a Delver start, I don't think. We don't have a way to answer an early Delver.
You have a Source of Plowshares.
We don't have a way to cast it.
Okay.
We are presenting a turn 2 answer to combo,
Okay.
maybe, if they haven't already killed us by then because they're on the play.
So let me ask you this: if your turn 1 vial resolves, is your hand good?
Our hand is fair if the turn 1 vial goes off.
Okay. I would say your hand is great if the turn 1 vial resolves. You have Thalia, Wasteland, Port, a land-based threat. You have a card that you can play against combo. Your hand is relatively weak if your vial is thought seized or countered. But otherwise, this is a pretty great hand. You don't need to hit a land drop immediately because you have Port, Wasteland, Factory. You have things that you can do with your mana. You might want to consider playing Factory here on the off chance that you actually want to attack on your next turn.
Dad, I'm scared. They're playing basic forests. That tells me they might be on elves.
Yeah, that is the fear. But they didn't play a card on turn 1, so the chances that it's actually elves went way down. Okay, do you know what you're playing against?
I'm playing against a lone deck, aren't I?
Nope. Strike 1.
They haven't played a cantrip yet, so I don't think it's Oko.
It's okay. Here's what you're playing against. You are playing against Green Vial. So you are playing against a Green Sun Once Upon a Time toolbox deck.
Okay.
It plays 4 Noble Hierarchs and then 17 one-of creatures of various utility.
Yo.
Your opponent has Ether Vial and Birthing Pod.
Oh.
So, this is going to be an interesting game.
Yeah, so I think I'm going to wasteland their port here.
That sounds fantastic.
Open us up for future turns.
Yes. So, this Jitte is probably going to be very good against our opponent. Our opponent will have answers to it in their deck.
Are they a mono green build?
They are a mono green build.
Okay, so I'm not expecting to see a.
Alright, I'm a liar. They have a trop in there for some reason. Okay. I take it back.
Huh.
I was excited. So your opponent is actually probably playing a bug lands deck now.
Okay.
You have a lot of lines this turn. Talk to me about what you're thinking about.
So I can fire up my factory and attack in, and then dump out Thalia or one of the Revokers
Okay.
off the vial. I can dump in a Revoker and Thalia, but I don't know what on earth I'd name with the Revoker, so I don't think I'm gonna go for that yet.
Okay.
I can go for Jitte and Thalia on this
Okay.
turn.
Let me ask you a question. What's the scariest card in blue and green that your opponent could be playing?
Probably Oko.
Yeah. So if you play the Revoker, you're naming Oko. That card is very likely in their deck. So what you need to do this turn is sculpt your game plan. So how tightly do you need to squeeze your opponent's mana this turn? Follow-up question is, are you ticking up the vial to 3 next turn? So you want to sculpt your hand based on the answers. Sorry, you want to sculpt your play based on the answers to those questions.
So if I just dump out the Thalia off the vial, then I don't have to worry about an Oko this turn.
That is correct.
Following turn, I can I can tick up the vial, go for Prelate on 3 for the Okos.
Or 2 for Loam and Decay and Library. You have double Revoker to deal with Oko.
Okay.
So what you need to be thinking about is, do you want to play Jitte this turn if you're going to put a Prelate on 2 another turn down the line?
I think that I do.
Okay.
Because if I don't play it this turn, I don't think I will play it.
Okay.
Especially if I'm intending to go for a Prelate.
And you probably want to put your Thalia in play before you let your opponent untap.
Yeah. Yeah, I've gotten into the habit of just dumping Thalias or dumping things off of vial and end step.
Yeah, that's a fine habit to build. And note, you aren't locked into your decision to tick the vial up. You can change your mind and wait a turn if information changes.
I could very easily go for Equip Jitte and... Well, maybe I don't get to go for Equip Jitte. So opponent is going to port my port. Do I just man up the factory off of that instead? Or do I...
That's a fine decision to make. Essentially, putting the mana into factory is correct if you don't draw another land.
Yeah. I think I'm going to play towards the other land, though.
Okay.
I will, however, tap it for good measure. Prelate will go up to... We will go up to 3 for the Prelate.
Okay.
I'm fine with losing the mana.
Great.
And And there's the high return line that we were hoping for.
Okay, hold on. Oh, no. Okay,
Uh,
it's fine. Now go ahead and attack. But there was a real consideration there to play a Revoker on Oko using your mana, and then also casting the Prelate on 2.
see.
So now you put that in, like, you put it on 2 to stop loam, to stop decays and whatnot. But if your opponent has Oko, they can Oko and turn it into an Elk. So the line you played is a more aggressive line. But there were other lines available. Our opponent does not appear to have black mana yet. They haven't had the opportunity to fetch yet. So, yep, there it is. Okay. Thalia has been elked instead.
Okay. Interesting line.
That is indeed interesting. Oh,
okay. Scoop. Okay. Let's see what we would have drawn.
You would have been in good shape.
Been in a decent spot.
Yeah, you would have killed an Oko, revoked an Oko, probably, or just like wasted important your opponent. You were in good shape.
I think I would have revoked an Oko, wastelanded the opponent, and gotten in for, let's see, 2, 5, at least 5 damage.
Well, 5 damage would have gone at Oko, and 2 damage would have gone at your opponent. All right, what are you thinking about boarding in?
So, you told me that they're on a lot of 1-drops. So chalices sound good to me.
What 1-drops are you thinking of?
You said nobles and I think birds. And,
okay, so when I was talking about that, and I was talking about this, that's because I saw Forest into Rishadenport, so I initially thought it was this mono green deck. Then they played the Tropical Island, and they showed us they were a either bug lands or blue-green lands deck instead.
Okay.
So board kind of like you're playing against a different lands deck. So that's still going to be fine for library and potentially exploration. The council's judgments are going to be good for Okos.
Yeah, some number of council's judgments. I'm not sure all three is correct.
We'll kind of see what we think.
Yeah, we'll see what we have to take out.
So what are you thinking is going to come out?
I'm thinking that we take out. We trim at least 1 swords.
Okay.
I think we take out at least 2 swords actually, because we haven't seen any creatures out of the opponent.
Okay, that's fine. Your opponent may have Uro or Primeval Titan.
Okay. Vision tasting similarly doesn't seem fantastic.
Am I sharing my screen with you?
You are not.
Okay. All right, I'm too slow. But your opponent may have Elvish Reclaimers, Ramunap Excavator, Uro, and Oko.
Okay.
You have 20 seconds. Pull some swords. Pull Jitte.
Swords, pull Jitte, and then
just whack the submit button so you make sure you submit something.
trim Amon.
Okay.
1 lucky CJ.
Okay, so there's one council judgment in the deck.
Yeah, we're just playing 1 councils right now.
Okay, and we have 2 sword splashers available.
Yep. Okay, so this hand looks really good against them. We have turn 2 Thalia followed by a Prelate or a Wasteland. I'm gonna keep it.
Yeah, this is a fine keep. We'll have some questions about our sequencing, but it's probably going to be Plains Go, Plains Thalia, and then we make real decisions from there. It may change if our opponent starts out with a reclaimer. But reclaimer and exploration are the most common turn 1 plays from this deck.
So we still just have planes go. We have the option of revoking the reclaimer now.
Yes. I don't know that we'll do that, but it's something that we're going to have to keep in mind. Basic Plains is a strong Magic card.
Not quite as strong as Basic Island, but
yeah, few cards are though.
Up there. It's up there. Okay.
The world is your oyster. What would you like to do?
So they haven't shown me anything from a graveyard yet.
Well, kind of. Elvish Reclaimer gets bigger once there's 3 lands in graveyard.
Yeah, but they'll have a little bit of work to do that at least. I mean, if they want to fetch for a non-basic and then wasteland themselves, they're more than welcome to do so for me.
Well, alternatively, they just activate Elvish Reclaimer at end of turn, get rid of a wasteland, get a fetch land, they fetch, and now it's a 3/4. So
we could Thalia to prevent them from getting an Oko this turn.
That is correct, unless they are playing Ancient Tomb.
We can Revoker on Reclaimer or Oko.
Okay.
We could just Stoneforge for a Batter Skull.
Okay.
Or we can play the Rip.
So in these times where you have multiple similar decisions, I often find that it's most useful to think about how do you most easily lose the game. So let me ask you that question. What's the quickest way that you die?
Well, at Dark Depths. I'm just going to go ahead and pass through to my second main. Just to pass clock. We didn't have anything that we could attack with.
So I think the quickest way you die is your opponent just getting one combo piece followed by the other piece. So I might consider just revoking the Elvish Reclaimer and just forcing them to use it as a mana fixer here. If your opponent plays Oko off the top, you know, things are kind of annoying, but you still have a lot of resources. You know, you can Stoneforge for a piece of equipment. You can Prelate and force them to use their turn to turn that into an Elk. You have the Rest in Peace to make the Reclaimer smaller so that your Elks can potentially get through the Reclaimer. But if your opponent were to produce multiple lands, create a Dark Depths, like you just don't have answers to it right now that are easy.
So,
Elvish Reclaimer.
I was reading the text on Revoker, thinking that the opponent might have made a terrible, terrible decision, and that we could punish them dearly by naming Wooded Foothills.
Nope, that's one of your key differences between it and Pithing Needle.
So I'm just gonna take one here.
You sure are, because the opponent can fetch and turn it into a 3/4 at any time. So you're actually taking 3 here. Alright, and luckily opponent does not have the Oko here.
So I think that this turn,
okay,
my line is to wasteland the Blast Zone before it can get scary. And then I think I Thalia, follow-up turn I Plains and Rest in Peace.
That sounds great.
Okay. I will play Thalia now to play around Daze.
More importantly, it helps you. Hold on, you probably don't want to do that yet. So there's still a crop rotation that you can play around.
Okay.
If your opponent is playing it. So I would just go ahead and attack in with the Revoker now. Okay. So now go ahead and go to the end step. So you probably want to Wasteland here, because if you let them untap, then Elvish Reclaimer will just do work. So I would go ahead and Wasteland the Blast Zone. It is awkward if they have crop rotation, though.
Which it appears they do.
Yep. But again, we could not play around that by waiting until their upkeep, because we played into Reclaimer then.
Yep.
A second Blast Zone.
Okay.
That was a little unexpected.
What are they trying to do with
Library? Oh, Life from the Loam.
Okay.
Blast Zone, Foothills, Wasteland.
Foothills now.
Another Reclaimer?
I wonder if it wasn't a Force of Vigor that they're hoping to get more value out of.
No. Force of Vigor is only free on your turn.
So I think my line is Plains Prelate on 2.
That sounds great. That stops the Life from the Loam in one way.
Alternatively, we could cast the Rip, but I also like having the body and.
If you put the Rip into play, you're essentially setting yourself up for a 3-for-1 off Blast Zone.
True.
So Prelate on 2 seems fine. Get some diversity of converted mana costs in there.
Then we do not attack into this because we just lose. Well, hang on. So they can't actually make it bigger right now.
That is correct. They cannot crop rotation. So the Thalia attack is guaranteed safe, and you can trade Revoker for their Reclaimer if you would like.
I think I'll go for the safer play here.
I would have attacked with the Revoker because they're already threatening Blast Zone to get rid of your Revoker and your Thalia. So if you can trade a body for that, or if you can get in 2 points of damage with it, you're just getting more value out of your cards.
Okay.
Holy Blast Zone.
That's a hose. That is Oh no, that's the second one that he loaned back.
Okay. Never mind. I take it back.
That's not as disgusting as we initially thought. So
Now,
I think I attack with all.
well, what can your opponent do?
So opponent can crop rot now.
Opponent can crop right now. Opponent could also just sack a Blast Zone for no... Or no, I guess that would blow up their Reclaimer as well. Never mind, I take that back. The attack is dangerous if opponent has Crop Rot.
I'd rather not play into it. And then I think I'm gonna defer playing anything else here.
Okay, you could consider playing a Stoneforge since it just, like, cantrips.
Yeah.
But playing nothing is fine as well.
I think the Stoneforge is okay, and I think I'll get the Batterskull out with it this time.
Okay.
just say they have to answer this right now, or
Yeah, it forces an activation on your opponent's turn, which you do like.
yeah.
Excuse me. So, like, the Blast Zone on 2 would basically be your opponent's entire turn. Oh.
Okay.
Okay.
2-minute exploration. Okay. Can mislead my factory. Okay, so now we have to decide. Oh, I guess we.
So opponent is going to put you into a situation where instead of blowing up your creatures with Blast Zone, your opponent is going to try to make you pay for the creatures and then blow them up.
Yeah. So I guess I have the question of which of the creatures do I care the most about? So Revoker is currently keeping that Reclaimer in check. I feel like we're past the point where Thalia is impressive.
So the easier way to look at this is which one of your 3 creatures do you want to lose?
Right. I think it's the Stoneforge.
I agree.
It has already given me the value that it needed.
Yeah. So I would just pay for all of the others. And now we're just looking to hit land drops.
It's not a land drop.
Okay, you don't have a real play here.
Yeah, we don't do anything. We don't even attack, I don't think.
No. The Reclaimer is big now. Your opponent is going to have to keep paying for that thing, which is cool, because that ties up more of their mana potentially for Blast Zone reasons. But we don't get to do much right now.
Yeah.
This is going to be a 20-turn game.
All right. So,
Yeah.
which of these do we?
You're just paying for all of them.
Hey, land drop.
There you go. So your question is, do you want to play another creature onto the board? Mom can protect things from being Oko'd, but it would also just mean that's like one more thing that you have to pay the upkeep cost for.
Yeah. Ah.
I'll leave that one to you.
So how do I lose from here? Because right now I'm not actively losing.
You lose by your opponent drawing something like Uro, Primeval Titan, or Oko.
So I'm going to. I'm not happy about it, but I'll commit to the board to protect myself from future turns of Oko if that does hit play and not next turn.
So your opponent might actually try to set up Blast Zone on X equals 3 and get rid of the Prelate. Which in some ways might be good for us, because then we can deploy the Rest in Peace and stop the Life from the Loam Blast Zone recursion shenanigans. But we'll kind of see where things go. We're in an awkward standoff for now, though.
So I'm just paying for all of these.
Okay.
Continuing to hit land drops feels good.
So you can consider making some attacks and doing pro-green things if you want to try to push damage and, like, force Blast Zone activations. But I think your opponent is going to activate the Blast Zone on 3 anyway, so that may not be necessary.
Yeah, I think I'd rather have an answer.
Nope. Infinite patience.
I don't see how this game favors them much more going long, except for the fact that we're at 8.5 minutes.
So, yeah, never mind.
Okay.
So you might want to start giving something pro-green and swinging it in. Like, try to force Blast Zone activations. Doesn't matter which one it is as long as it has 2 power. So I think the long game definitely favors the opponent because we're dead to a single card. 1 crop rotation just kills us. Well, not 1 crop rotation. But, like, they can assemble a combo pretty easily.
Okay, so there.
Alright. That is what it is.
Yeah. Not much we could have played around with that.
Well, the opponent has all the time in the world, and the long game is favoring them very strongly with, like, threatening Blast Zone recursion. Okay, so our opponent is Bug. There's the Abrupt Decay, finally, that I kind of suspected was there. So Wooded Foothills can fetch some black land and give them another zombie.
I'm not. This might sound crazy.
Okay.
But I'm not sure I want to pay for the mom this turn.
Okay. Well, what's your game plan?
I don't pay for the mom.
Okay.
I can give one of the creatures pro-green or pro-black right now. It doesn't really matter which, because they'll not be swinging in.
Okay.
I pay for the other 2. I have 3 mana up for Recruiter. Recruiter I don't pay for next turn, and I get a Crusader off of it.
Okay. That sounds like a real potential path to victory. I like it. You can give the Thalia pro... Yeah, no. Yeah, it doesn't matter. Give something protection. So Crusader threatens to end the game in a hurry. We're going to need to get the Blast Zones out of play somehow, and then exile them via Rest in Peace. But Mirror Crusader presents at least a path to victory, which we...
So I can push damage here, I think.
So your opponent has 2 lands in Graveyard plus Wooded Foothills, so...
That was a bad.
Yes.
Yeah, I didn't see the Catacomb there.
It's okay. It's very easy to make mistakes while talking over your lines. It takes a lot of your focus off of the gameplay.
I just want to take a second here again and thank you for helping me out here. I've been learning a lot tonight, uh, even as weird as things like not thinking about what I'm doing right now, but how do I win or what beats me from here.
Yeah, I mean, I'll talk about this more with you at the end, but that's the most important thing I try to teach in these tutoring sessions is like, what do I do to win the game? How do I lose the game? It's thought patterns like that that teach you to succeed afterwards. Opponent's very good at milling abrupt decay.
Huh, yeah, they are. There's the little friend that we're afraid of. So I'm not sure I want to pay for the recruiter this turn.
Yeah, probably not.
He's done his job. I am paying for that reclaim. Okay. So opponent taps one of my mana.
And they'll tap down another one as well. But we now know they don't have abrupt decay in hand, which is nice information to have.
So I think my line from here is still just
Jam the Crusader and
jam Crusader and tell them to deal with it.
Yep. The Blast Zone will deal with that. But again, if we can get Blast Zones into the graveyard and then exile them, that's where we need to be. So specifically, we're hoping to get the 1 in 2 on 2 out of play, because then we can play the rest in peace. Oh geez, Cabal Pit is a beating, and I don't know that you're going to beat that card.
Okay, do we want to go to game 3 just to respect the clock?
That's fine. You can still potentially win this game, but it's stacked against you. Let's save that time. We also need to take a minute and yeah, just concede.
Okay.
You also need to take some time here. Or no, we did. Did we sideboard okay?
Not.
No, we've got some changes to make.
Okay, so get rid of one of those.
Getting rid of a Stoneforge is fine.
We're already dumping a GT.
Yeah, you probably want all of your Council's Judgments. So your opponent has both Reclaimer and Oko, potentially Uro, that you want to deal with.
In which case, I'm not sure I love having all 4 Thalia.
Sure, that's something you can definitely choose to trim a little bit of. You're at 61 currently. You could even trim a second Thalia if you want.
Yeah, I don't hate that. And then we're just really playing towards the late game then with the stuff. And I think we don't get to throw this one back.
I agree. It's not exciting, but it has too many good cards. So you have a nice disruptive start in that, like, you can go Thalia into Prelate and soft lock your opponent out of a lot of lines.
Mm-hmm.
And I would just go ahead and like F6 through your opponent's turns, not represent Plow.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, that's awkward. So, real talk, I would play the Vial over the Stoneforge.
Okay.
The Stoneforge is like the most mana efficient and most threatening play. But
the Vial plays towards a late game.
The Vial plays towards a late game, and the Vial also helps play around the Caracas that your opponent has.
Okay. So that tells me that they have a loan.
Or they might just have color issues. Like, our opponent opened up on Caracas as their first land. I would straight up Flicker Wisp that Mox Diamond. Just make them have more lands.
Crop rot, maybe.
It would be a weird time to crop rot.
Just good practice.
Yeah, I got it.
Where they are?
This is probably just a crop rot for mana fixing. Yeah, just for appropriate colors. Alright, opponent did have another land. This is not actually the worst for us. It's not great, but it, like, definitely could be worse.
Land.
You can get Jitte counters if you want to do that this turn. You can also play Thalia plus Stoneforge plus port your opponent, or like Stoneforge plus Jitte plus Thalia. Plenty of lines available to you. Just kind of take some actions.
I think I'm going to go for some. Or no, we don't have Jitte.
Okay.
We took it out of the deck.
Yep, that's correct. Then I'd just go ahead and put in.
You could also just Thalia and Prelate.
Yeah, I would just Thalia Prelate, attack the Oko for 3.
Put that on.
And that probably goes on 2.
Yeah, they have things that answer our cards right now in that graveyard. We do back.
Yeah, so don't F6 through your opponent's turn, because if they end up removing the Thalia, there's worlds where you might Swords to Plowshares something.
Am I hoping for off the top? I think I'm hoping for a Revoker or a Council's Judgment.
Both would be great. You also just have Swords to Plowshares, the food, and Kill the Oko as a line that's available to you.
Do I want to put that up?
No, I'd leave that on too. You still have another card to put in. Yeah. Just junk the food. Gotta get aggro and kill the Oko. And you might even want to just send everything at it.
Yeah.
It's overkill, but you don't want to like have your opponent crop rot into Maze of Ith and ruin your plans.
Right.
So I would upkeep, tap down the Blast Zone. Force them to crack it now and kill the Thalia if they want it. And then you can safely put in the Stoneforge. They also might need to just tick it up again.
I think they are.
Yeah, that's fine. So now we'll be Stoneforging for Batter Skull, probably.
Yep. So waste the board.
I just leave it at 2 until you have a reason to tick it up.
So how am I playing this out? What can I get?
I would attack for 7, leave Stoneforge back. And then I would just pass the turn and port them off of something.
I think I will.
Okay, they made the decision for you.
Okay. I was going to say, if they didn't do that, I was going to port the blast zone again.
Yeah.
And just make
For
them
force
pop
the
it off.
activation. Yep. Yep.
Okay.
So now your vial goes up this turn. Yeah, so I just send in the troops.
So
Do we have Palace Jailer in the deck?
I do.
Yeah.
Yep, Jailer's still in.
Yep. I would just go ahead and recruit her for Jailer.
That's actually the line I was going to suggest. I was going to say I could go for Recruiter or Crusader, or I could just go for a Jailer and try to go for some card advantage.
Yeah, I mean, this is the turn where you either just take a Wisp or you take a Jailer and just ride it.
And then
4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You are presenting lethal.
then that will never leave 3 again.
Play your land out pre-combat. And then attack in with everything. Just helps you play around a sneaky Merit Lodge.
Awesome.
Okay. So we got a 3-2 finish, which is not really what we're looking for, but it's fine. We definitely made some errors throughout the league. And sideboarding took way longer than normal because we were both talking about it. I'm going to rehydrate a little bit here, and then I'll say a few more things. But while I'm doing that, what are some of your thoughts from the league about like your play or the experience or whatever?
So I thought that your take on Cataclysm versus the Loamy Lands decks was interesting. It's a perspective I hadn't really thought of. I've kind of always known the card as this will win you games that you have no business winning.
Oh, that's definitely true.
In which case, I wanted to play it in the event that I end up in a position where I can win.
So, a guy by the name of Louis Fata, who is a D&T player that I've exchanged deck lists with and information with over the years, way back at, I want to say it was like GP New Jersey, the Giant Legacy one. I had a conversation about him and with him about Cataclysm, and we were talking about it in the Elves matchup. And I think he was the one who first kind of turned me on to this idea, because I was boarding in Cataclysm there as sort of a, oh crap, maybe this will let me win button. And his argument was,
no, you're diluting your deck.
Who's going to rebuild faster if you cast Cataclysm? And a lot of times the answer was the Elves deck, because they have like Elvish Visionary, Wirewood Symbiote, Glimpse of Nature. And that, after that conversation, I started thinking about Cataclysm in a very different way. So my argument was, the matchup's so bad, I want to try and mise some free wins with Cataclysm. And his argument was, yeah, but how much of the time are you actually winning when you do cast the Cataclysm? So it's interesting to take new perspectives on cards, and I find that really useful.
Yeah. So other than that, I mean, I'm still not sold on just one Crusader. I think that replacing Revoker number 3 with another Crusader just feels better to me.
The other thing you can do is get rid of Prelate too in the main deck.
That's possible. I mean, I guess I am playing 4 to 6 or 8 sideboard answers to the combo decks.
So at the beginning of the stream when we were talking, you were essentially showing me a deck list that was built to beat or at least compete with Breach and Oko. And Revoker is a card that overlaps with both of those matchups. So I don't know that you necessarily want to cut it. Whereas Prelate is kind of slow for the Breach matchup and not always amazing versus Oko, since if you don't have protection for it, it just gets elked and didn't actually do too much. So I would be more inclined to cut Prelate 2 from the main deck than Revoker 3. But I do think you're correct that more copies of Crusader is probably good.
Yeah, I mean, because it also is, in its own way, an answer to an Oko, because it can't be elked, and elks on the other side of the table mean nothing to it.
So are you kind of familiar with like where to find deck lists and whatnot?
I know about Goldfish. I don't look at it, but every once in a while I remember that MTG Top 8 exists.
Okay, yeah, that was gonna be what I suggested. That's a quick reference point to see like what recent 5.0 deck lists look like and whatnot. If you're unsure kind of like what to do with flex slots. There are a handful of D&T pilots who tend to put up results, and I kind of look at how their decks change from week to week when I'm looking for inspiration for like daily D&T, for example.
Yeah.
So I think your sideboard's fine. Let me say that going in. But I think a problem with D&T sideboards right now is how skewed they have to be because of Breach mostly. So like we look at your list, the 6 cards in the middle column there, Chalice Void, Deafening Silence, Fairy, are kind of not cards that you can universally bring in a lot of matchups. So
yeah, they're pretty narrow.
If we think about a lot of fair matchups in Legacy, you kind of have like 3 Council Judgments to bring in, and maybe some of the other cards, depending on like what your opponent is doing. There's fewer generic cards here than we've seen in many other lists in the past. So like this is a list from September last year. I'm just gonna like pull up one at random. That's a bad example. Nope. That's the link I want to click. So like this is just a random list from 2018 because like I just happen to have my name up here. So like in this deck list, there's a random recruiter, there's these Gideons, there's this Palace Jailer, there's the Ballista. There were more cards in this deck list that were sort of like flexible for all your like mid-rangey sorts of matchups that could just kind of fill whole. Oh, you can't see my screen. I'm not screen sharing. Hold on.
I wasn't gonna say anything. I assumed.
I'm so used to streaming that I just assume everyone can see that. Okay. All right.
It's okay. You're also pretty good about reading off what you were seeing, so I'm like, it's okay.
Yeah.
He'll tell me. He can paint the picture with his words.
The sideboard was 3 Chalice, 1 Ballista, 2 Path, 1 Relic Warder, 2 Rest in Peace, 2 Council's Judgment, a Recruiter, 2 Gideon, and a Palace Jailer. And that sideboard in comparison was so much more flexible. But current D&T sideboards don't have a lot of flexibility. And I don't think that's because you're building it wrong. I just think that's where the deck is at right now in terms of construction.
Yeah. So something else I've been thinking about here while we've been talking is so Revoker 3 is fine. Maybe move Prelate 2 to the sideboard over CJ number 3.
So I think
Or I might be
both.
just looking way too deep against combo decks
I
with
think
that one.
like a lot of pilots have been on 3 Council's Judgment. So I know XJ Cloud has been on 3 Council's Judgment and 3 Cataclysms for the Oko matchups. And I think Tetraverse was also playing 3 Council's Judgments. Let me see if I can find one of their recent deck lists. Yes, they were also playing 3 Councils, 2 Cata. I'd be pretty reluctant to go down from 3 Council's Judgments. For any sort of mid-rangey matchup, the Mirror, Loam, Maverick, Oko decks, you're going to want to board in all 3 of those. So I would be more willing to cut both chalices, play another Deafening Silence, and play the Sanctum Prelate if you feel like you want the Sanctum Prelate. But is Sanctum Prelate better than stuff that's already over there? Like, 1 copy, absolutely. You want 1 copy in the 75, hands down.
Right, but beyond that,
I tend to like Sanctum Prelate the best when Show and Tell is one of the premier combo decks, because Sanctum Prelate on 3 is so strong there. But
yeah.
when
And it's
Breach...
a slower deck, too, so
yeah.
we can get to it easier.
When, like, Breach, Red-Black Reanimator, TES are probably the 3 biggest combo decks that people would be thinking about playing right now, Prelate is, like, the 3rd card that you would play out in a game. So, I bet you could probably get away with 1. Like, if you're going to play 2, I think the second one's in the main deck. But, like, you want to play another Crusader, so I would cut the main deck Prelate for Crusader. And if you really feel like you want that Prelate in the sideboard, I would switch to a 3rd Deafening Silence over Chalices and put the Prelate in that slot. You don't have to, like, figure that all out now. It's the food for thought for later.
Mull on for a while when I'm wishing I could be asleep tonight.
All right.
I think deck did well though. It like we just kind of got bullied a little bit against Bryant Cook, but
well, I made
there's
an
not much
error
we
there,
can
right?
do against that.
So we were talking about putting Prelate on 2 or 4 without having, some of his recent deck lists up, and the recent deck lists have shifted to all win conditions in the sideboard instead of there being a win condition in the main deck. And because we did that, we gave our opponent a grape shot out. Now, his deck list could have been a little different from what's posted, and we obviously know that it was, since there was 1 Infernal Tutor. But, like,
Also,
we could have brought that to a game 3. And been unfavored, but we could have brought it to a game 3.
And I just want to say it in case he watches this at some point. That was a very fun line to watch. Watching you try to figure that out was really entertaining.
Yeah, I don't know how much of his content you watch, but he's very, very proficient at that deck. He has won through a lot of things that I wouldn't have expected him to be able to beat.
Yeah.
There's a reason why every couple of weeks he's posting about top 8ing a challenge or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, with that deck, he's like Cyrus CG with Ant or Enevolton on D&T. Like, it's just where he's found his niche, and he's really hunkered down and found every corner case with it.
Oh, yeah. All right, do you have any last questions here before we wrap things up?
No, I think we're okay. I appreciate your time here this evening.
Of course.
I'm taking a lot of lessons away from it with sequencing and needing to take time to think my lines out before I just play.
Yeah. And there were some times where, you just like, oh, I'm gonna pass to my second main to like save a second of clock, and it's like, no, 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 just think it out. Moto and paper are totally different. In paper, if you haven't made a play in about 30 seconds, it starts to be tick tock. In Moto, you can sit there for 2 or 3 minutes if you need to and really like chart out a course for a turn. You can't do that frequently or you're gonna time out. But when you have those
Right.
difficult spots, figure it out. Another thing I often do is if I have like a really difficult spot, I just screenshot it so I can think about it more in depth later and play on.
Yeah. I've taken to rewatching my VODs, or at least going back sometimes when I know I've had a really interesting spot where I've either won or lost from, where it could have gone either way, and looking and seeing where did I make a play that could have won me or lost me this game.
Yeah. And even better, if you can get other people to watch your VODs, you'll start learning things you didn't know. So, for example, tonight, one of the things I pointed out was like the really minor, hey, if you're going to bounce this Thalia, before you do it, activate your Ether Vial first. Like, there's
Yeah,
there's going to be a lot of little things like that where like 95% of the time it doesn't matter, and then 5% of the time it wins you a game.
right.
All right. So for anyone who's still watching at YouTube on this point, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it was useful to you. And if you have any questions about tutoring, there's a tab at the top of the Thraben University website that has all of the details. Folks, I hope you have a great rest of the evening.